Electrologists and linear practitioners. Electrology Rules Advisory Committee will now exit executive session and reconvene open session at 9:33 a.m. No final decisions were made and no votes were taken in executive session. The public phone line has now been unmuted and representatives of the news media may once again report all board discussions and actions. Okay, we're back in. So we will just dive right into where we were. We're just kind of go over the decisions you guys made at the last meeting. I sent you out the documentation yesterday. Again, I just put into words on paper what decisions you made last time. And then we'll start off at Electrology Supervisor is where we actually left off. So to talk about that. So I'm just going to go through these. Feel free to jump in if there's something that I missed or you want to talk about it further, we can do that. So for direct supervision, we landed on means a supervisor immediately accessible and in view of the practical procedure to provide guidance and instruction to the temporary trainee. That's the first one. We didn't really talk about educational institution. It's a HLO broader rule that we use. So that's just kind of throw that in there. Official transcript, the biggest piece that we added here, we added this prior to the meeting, was adding the final practical examination score. And then the 600-hour program for the electrology school. We don't have one, but if we did, this would be the requirement they'd fall under. I did have a question when we talk about education must be conducted by a qualified licensed electrologist who is recognized by an educational institution. We talked about this the last meeting, but when I went to write it, we need to kind of define what qualified is. If you want it to be qualified, I need to have a qualifier. So in my mind, it's probably 2 years. That's what HEC requires for teachers to have 2 years of experience. So it would be reasonable to say qualified means a licensed electrologist who's been actively practicing for 2 years. Okay, does that sound about right?
I would agree with that.
Okay. I'm going to share my screen here. I'm going to try and share my screen. That. Here we go. Okay. So let me. Oh, there's some. Okay, everyone's on mute now. You take the navigation. Okay, I've already put that there. Okay, so moving on. Okay. So I tried to at number 5 right here. The temporary trainee may begin providing practical procedures once they have observed the supervisor demonstrating any one of the 3 procedures listed in subsection 4 of this rule. Does that make sense? I was trying to land on if they observed 12 procedures in thermolysis flash, then they could go ahead and start doing that. I was trying to capture that, but I'm not sure that I did. So does it make did I get there with that language, do you think?
Sammy, which dash are you on?
I am on 910-005. Somebody is not on mute.
Thank you.
Number 5. So if you think I got there, that's what it means. So if you've done if you've been observed for the thermolysis flash for the 12, you can start doing those procedures. You don't have to have 12 of the electrolysis, galvanic, 12 of the thermolysis manual before you start doing. Yes, Jamie.
All right, Sammy, I have a slight a problem with only 2 years of practicing. In our profession, you really don't become, I want to say, good for at least 3 to 5 years. And I think 2 years is just too little. I would like to see that in order to become a supervisor, you need 3 years of practice, because it usually takes 2 years to get your practice going, so that you yourself, even though you have a license, you're not busy and you're not really perfecting your skills. So I would like that changed to 3 years. I don't know what anybody else feels. As far as your wording goes in number 5, I think it's very clear. I don't think it has to be changed.
So I guess the ups and downsides of 3 years means that's an extra year that somebody can't start supervising and can't start getting people licensed. It is what the Higher Education Coordinating Commission uses as their guidepost for people who are qualified. So it would be going above and beyond what the actual school body says is required for enough practice hours to start supervising. So those are kind of
Except our profession, you're taking a needle and putting it into a skin. You could be causing a lot of damage. It's not like piercing where you do, let's say, 100 piercings. It's the exact same thing. I can't think of any other, or like a hairdresser. The damage they can do is relatively small. But in electrology, you can do a lot of damage. And the first 2 years you're practicing, you're really practicing. And your skills, I would like to see it at 4 or 5.
Okay.
But
I think the best way is to take a vote on the 2 years. So if somebody, I'm just gonna, so what I'll do is I'll say the motion and someone can just say so moved and then a second. That way we're not trying to fumble around and get the right wording. So let's see, let me read it here. Where's that? Education must be conducted by a qualified licensed electrologist with 2 years of active practice and who is recognized by an educational institution.
So are you looking for someone to
Make a motion to so move that.
I'll make a motion to move that.
I'll second it.
Okay, then I'll call the roll. Roll sheet is Jamie Bloom,
no.
Sheila Ahern,
Yes.
Lacey Keeney,
Yes.
Seth Johnstone,
Yes.
Kate, Sabina Knoll,
Yes.
Nicole Pappas,
Yes.
Carla Eberly.
Yes.
Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So it's 6-1, motion passes. So
All right.
Okay. So Sarinthia has a question on the next one. Go ahead.
Okay, okay, can you hear me? So I guess how I'm reading this, it says that I can begin providing practical procedures on on any one of the three procedures listed. So for
Are you on number 5 or number 7?
number 5,
Okay, because we just did number 6. So you want the one above?
yeah, number 5
Okay.
in regards to, yes, because I kind of bypassed it. And so if I do one of the, like if I do manual, does that mean I can do any of the others as well?
No.
Once?
Because you could just do manual.
Is that what that's saying really? Because it says any one of the three. I can do any one of the three
No.
once I've done one. No.
This may begin providing practical procedures once they've observed the supervisor demonstrating any one of the 3. So if it's, you've seen them demonstrate thermolysis, then you can start doing thermolysis flash. If it doesn't, that's why I'm asking, is
I
it
don't think
clear?
it does. I don't. To me, what it looks like is I can begin providing any practical procedures once any one of those other procedures listed in 4.
So do you have some suggested language?
Yes. Like the temporary trainee may begin providing the practical procedure or a practical procedure. I don't know, can we work on that language? Do you want me to come up with it right now?
Okay, so Cerinthian wants to make that clear, but we got the gist of what it's supposed to be. Okay, I will do that offline after we're done.
Sammy, you've got some hands up.
Oh,
Sorry.
Sheila, go ahead. Sorry.
I have a question about the wording. It appears in a few places about the supervisor being a qualified licensed electrologist. Does this mean qualified in Oregon, or can it be out of state as well?
That's a good question. In my mind, it was licensed in Oregon
It should definitely say that.
because you can't, I mean, you can't be teaching in Oregon unless you have a license. That would be a $5,000 civil penalty.
Okay, if a person, well, so I don't know if you'll get the situation where somebody might train with a trainer out of state, over in Washington or well, that's Washington is not a licensed state, but in coming out of some other state, the
So is the person traveling to Washington?
I don't know. I haven't thought that far yet.
I mean, I can say Oregon licensed electrologist. I mean, I guess one thing to think about, I mean, that would be, I mean, this is the education rules, so heck is gonna probably require them to be Oregon licensed, but I think we're more talking about the trainee piece. Under 007, which they kind of go hand in hand, but I'll just skip down there.
I think it's in
Oh, I'm trying to,
0029 as an active to hold an active electrology license with no current pending or disciplinary action.
yes, yes, you're right. I moved it off of this down to there. I mean, do you guys want it to say Oregon? Do you want them to have the option to be licensed in Washington?
Or Washington is an unlicensed state.
True, very true.
This is Lacey Keeney. I would also like to add something to what Sheila's saying. I like the fact that it says that it's a Oregon license, but I also would like to see it where it says recognized by an educational institution. And I think that should say educational institution requiring 600 hours of training, because Oregon's current, current until this changes, but I mean, it still looks like we're saying 600 hours, that it should be a 600-hour training program, which is what meets the Oregon requirements. So if someone went to California or somewhere else and got a 400-hour school training license and then was practicing, I almost think it should be a 600-hour, the same as what we require here in Oregon as a minimum requirement for hours of training.
That would be, that would not, I don't know that statutorily we could do that. Just to section someone out because, I mean, if they've met the qualification, which at this time means they've passed a written and practical exam, they've met minimum competencies, they've been practicing for 2 years, we would have a hard time saying that you also have to show us that you had 600 hours schooling. I mean, that would be really hard to.
Right. I was
fly
just
by the
thinking that
board.
if you're going to require someone to have 600 hours to obtain your license in Oregon, shouldn't the supervisor have had 600 hours of schooling? But I guess, you're right. Because I would imagine if they came from another state and tried to license here in Oregon, and didn't have the 600 hours that Oregon required, that they wouldn't receive reciprocity in the first place.
Say that again?
I said my assumption is since they are coming from out of state and trying to gain reciprocity in the state of Oregon, as they would have already had to have met Oregon requirements, which is 600 hours. So I guess that they'd already have it if they were Oregon licensed electrologists. So maybe you're right, it is a moot point.
Substantially equivalent. So, it has to be close to the 600 hours. And then there is a piece where if it's not substantially equivalent, they can show us other documentation, to show. Hey, Carla, can you put yourself on mute for me, please? We're getting echo back here.
I'm sorry.
Thank you. And again, I guess to what we talked about earlier with having the 2 years of experience versus 3 years of experience, requiring that them show an extra 600 hours is kind of creating an additional barrier to get somebody to start supervising, to get supervisors or trainees going, to get people licensed, which is our ultimate goal in this rulemaking, is to reduce barriers, and to get people through the program faster. And if, and then what, so just hypothetically, let's say we did require that someone have the 600 hours and the Oregon license and the 2 years of active practice. If they don't have the 600 hours, they have to go back to school and get it. Can they never be a supervisor? I mean, so just putting that out there, I think that we've answered the question. But there are some people that may, like from Washington, if they aren't equivalent because they don't have a license. So they may show us a facility license for electrology, and then they have to show us other documentation, like how long they've been in business, tax records to show that they've been practicing in electrology for X number of years. And I mean, the real guideposts of what's telling us they're meeting based on competencies that they passed the practical and written examination. So there's that. I mean, at some point you either have to take it, I mean, because we're talking about in for reciprocity, not requiring the written and practical examination if they have a license in another state. So this kind of goes hand in hand. And if we're looking at requiring them come through a 600-hour program, but we're not requiring them take take the test to get licensed now. So I think we've landed on just 2 years of experience and an active license, and then be Oregon licensed.
Right. I was agreeing with you, dear.
Okay. I was just talking through the whole thing. Sorry.
Okay.
I rambled.
Sorry, may I ask a question?
Yeah.
Sorry, this is Nicole Pappas. Is there a way that we could change it to the 2 years experience being in Oregon for a supervisor?
I mean, you can. I'm not sure what that documentation would look like. How we would. How would you envision them proving that they have 2 years of experience? Just that they hold a license for 2 years?
No, because someone can hold a license and work in a different state for 2 years. My concern is that someone can hold a license in Oregon, practice in a different state, and they're damaging a bunch of people's skin, but then they're coming to Oregon to teach. And there's no way to like regulate an unlicensed state. So does that make any sense?
Yeah, I'm just not sure how a person would prove that they've been actively practicing in Oregon.
Yeah, I
What
guess
the-
a
what the
facility
document-
license or that's already in there though.
Then that means we would be requiring that a supervisor have a facility license.
Right.
And it could be the two people on one facility, one has it and one doesn't.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Although as electrologists, when we work for a facility, we're required to tell Oregon Health Licensing what facility we're working for. So in that essence, Oregon Health Licensing would know what facility we've been working for the last 2 years, because as a state requirement, we are required to notify OHL what facility we're working for, even if we don't own that specific facility.
Perfect. Okay, great. Thank you for clearing that up.
So it would be able to be proven or shown that that person was practicing in the state of Oregon. I guess my whole concern here, and the reason I was talking about, what the qualifications were for the person and the 600 hours, is I understand removing barriers to try to get people through it quicker and to get them licensed and everything. But I also know that a lot of times the barriers aren't really barriers as much as they are a safety backstop to stop people from coming in that don't have the experience or training that could hurt people.
Okay, I think probably the easiest way to answer that is to take a vote on it and see if so I guess it would be two things: requiring them to be in Oregon. The first vote would be requiring a supervisor hold an active Oregon license with the 2 years of experience with no current or pending disciplinary action. So move somebody.
I move to adopt the language as is in number 2, hold an active Oregon electrology license with 2 years of experience with no current or pending disciplinary action.
Are
Need
we
a second.
adding that it's in the state of Oregon?
Yeah, that's in there.
Okay.
Oregon electrology license.
Right.
I'll second that.
And Seth is seconded. Jamie Bloom,
Yes.
Sheila,
Yes.
Lacey,
Yes.
Seth,
Yes.
Sabina,
Yes.
Nicole,
Yes.
and Carla.
Yes.
And the second vote would be to require the 2 years of experience be in Oregon, and by way of verification that they are working in a licensed facility, whether it be as just someone working in a facility or someone who is an owner of a facility.
I move that it's stated that practicing electrology in that facility.
Say that again.
I move that it is clear in the wording that it is practicing electrology in that facility.
So actively practicing in a Oregon licensed facility.
Yes. Because you can be a facility owner and not even be an electrologist. anybody can own a facility, a cosmetology facility or an electrology facility. You don't have to be a practicing person inside that facility, but you can own a facility.
In an Oregon facility. I mean, the question is, do they need to have the 2 years of experience in Oregon? That's the question, correct?
Isn't there a temporary rule currently in place that like we would accept California, which is equivalent? So making it Oregon would ban or not allow California folks to come here and practice, even though they may have relevant experience?
That would be, well,
Like
no.
making it that specific, wouldn't it? If we reduce things down, wouldn't that take away our ability to have reciprocity with states that do have similar requirements to us? Because we've said the state of Oregon versus saying states that have similar requirements.
So here's, yes, I think yes. They could still get the Oregon license through reciprocity, but this would limit them if, say, they wanted to come in from California and they've been working for 20 years in California, they get their reciprocity license, great. They've got 20 years of experience in California, they can't become a supervisor because their experience is not in Oregon.
That's my
So it
point,
would
yeah.
be a limiting.
Yeah, I had the same thought. I think that, I mean, maybe we can put in verbiage about actively practicing in a state that's established reciprocity with Oregon, but then I think we should be more active in going through other states' requirements and like actually checking all 49 other states and determining which ones would be considered equivalent enough to Oregon so that people from those states could come in and teach in Oregon if they desired.
I agree with that.
Is there currently evidence of supervisors not having this overwhelmingly? Or is this just something that we're concerned for that hasn't happened yet?
Yes, that.
Because I would encourage folks to not function from a fear-based perspective, but in a space of what are the current active statistics and the challenges that we can't get folks in California licensed here and vice versa. So creating more barriers from a situation that hasn't happened yet. I just want us to examine that part.
And electrologists have 0 complaints. There
this
was
is-
1 complaint in 25 years.
Thank you, Sammy. I was just going to say that I don't even know how, and this is Tina, licensing manager. I don't even know how that would look, starting to go through people for them to send us proof that they've been in a facility just because they're in that facility. There's not a number of hours that are required per week, month, or year for somebody to be working. So I think it would create more barriers. Just license for 2 years in the state of Oregon. And same for any other state that has reciprocity coming into Oregon would have the same 2-year experience, just like Sammy had said earlier.
Just a quick question regarding reciprocity. Is there any chance, I think that this would be just kind of a practical thing in general, for you or for somebody to make a list of all of the states whose licensing requirements have been deemed sufficient to qualify for an Oregon license? I think being able to publish a list of those states would make it would be helpful both for individuals looking to get licensed and for individuals practicing in other states who may be considering moving in the future and might be uncertain about whether or not they would be able to continue practicing in Oregon.
Sammy, do you want me to answer
Yeah,
that?
I'm gonna defer to
Okay.
Tina on this one.
Yeah, so we do have a list from NIC of states that have requirements similar to us, 600 hours. Some have practical exams. California has gone away from practical exams, like a few other states are also trying to go away from practicals. But there are similar states out there that have the 600 hours. We do have extra staff that can go through some of those states to make sure they're equivalent TARs and have a list. That's what we do for cosmetology currently. And that's what we would have to do for electrology.
I think that makes a lot of sense to do. That was something that I definitely was trying to find when I was initially kind of exploring options for getting licensed in Oregon before I got involved with this rack and knew about the trainee program that was under development. That was something that I was specifically looking for, and I suspect other people would be looking for that as well. And if nothing else, even just being able to put on your website points of clarification, like, does it have to be 600 hours? And if yes, does it have to be X number of hours of practical or more, or X number of hours of theory or more? And is it only considered reciprocal if there is a practical exam, or if we decide to do away with the practical exam in Oregon? I think that it would be helpful if there was some clarification, at least about what specifically constituted an equivalent licensure on the website, but ideally a list of states that were approved would be phenomenal.
I would say from an administrative perspective, in my mind, you're looking for trouble because states change all the time. I mean, California just dropped their practical exam. Nobody is required to take a practical exam to get
Yeah.
licensed in California. And so we're going to publish this list, and Tina can attest to this with cosmetology, and turn around. You know how rules are made within 6 months. There's a change. We don't know about it. And then we're outdated. It's easier to take someone who's coming from a state and look at that state individually at the time.
Right. Well, so, I mean, I guess I'm in the position, I'm trying to get licensed, and I would love to do it. I would love to train with someone in Oregon, but if that's not going to work out, then I need to go to California. But right now, I don't know if a California license would be considered equivalent because they've dropped the practical exam and because they don't have a 400-hour practical requirement. Their practical requirement is lower.
Their practical education requirement?
Yeah, they have a
There is-
600-hour total
Or
requirement,
600.
but
Yeah.
they don't have a 400-hour practical requirement. So right now, I don't even know if I could go to California, get a license, and then come back and get a license through reciprocity.
Yeah, I mean, as long as the school gives a practical exam, and so you'd show us your affidavit of licensure from California, and then you would show your transcript from the school, and the school would show that they gave you a practical and that you passed it, we would accept that as equivalent.
Okay. Well, even that would be helpful information to make publicly available, because I know that I'm not the only one with questions like that. It's just a suggestion. We had Tina on the call. I didn't realize that we had somebody like that on the call, and I just figured I would take advantage of the opportunity and ask some questions. But I don't
I
don't
feel
wanna
that
derail
question a
the
lot.
whole-
And that's the answer. We actually talked about it this morning, me and Tina,
Yeah,
because
okay.
they just changed that in January.
Uh-huh.
So we literally talked about it 5 minutes before the meeting. And
Okay.
that's how she was gonna handle it, is that, that whole, we've heard that the school's gonna give the practical, and that we would just ask that the, individual who's getting a license here, give us a copy of the transcript that would show that they took a practical, and then they have their license in California. We call it equivalent.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for that clarification.
But we can definitely make some kind of a statement on the website. I mean, I know I get that question a lot. And
Yeah.
I know Tina does, and Kyle as well.
Yeah. I
So
think some clarification on that would be phenomenal.
I'm just writing this down.
Thank you, and sorry for kind of taking us off on a tangent there.
No, because it was gonna come up. For
Okay.
sure. And I think maybe what might be helpful is maybe a short Q&A. Really short, but to kind of get us from now until January 1, we can start the training programs. That might be helpful. So, okay, back to the question at hand, which was, does the actively practicing for the last 2 years have to be in Oregon? I don't know if you want to take a vote on that, if you want to discuss it more,
agree.
Jamie.
I believe that in order to have an electrology license, I believe the person has to have been practicing in Oregon and following Oregon statutes and laws. If they're practicing in another state, that does not help the Oregon public. Therefore, I do feel that that person has to be practicing in Oregon.
I move that it states that it's practicing in Oregon for 2 years.
If we require that and somebody has a California license and has been practicing for like 20 years, it's just going to limit us if they're equivalent. And it just seems like it's a barrier to say that a California practice, if we recruit people, which is what we're hoping to do, have more supervisors here, and they're a 20 years in provider and they are ready to supervise people, then they have to wait 2 years to do that. It seems more that we would require them to have a license to go by all of the Oregon standards than to say, just because you're in the state, you're qualified. If they have the Oregon license, that is also them passing the test and proving that they have equivalent training to us.
Do we have a second on the motion? And then we'll take a roll. You don't have to agree with the motion to second it, by the way.
I second it.
Okay, I will call the roll. Jamie Bloom,
Could you please read it again? We've had so much discussion.
hold an active Oregon electrology license and have been actively practicing in Oregon for the last 2 years with no current and pending disciplinary action.
Yes, I agree.
Sheila Ahern,
No, I believe it's too limiting.
I'm just writing this down. Lacey Keeney,
Yes, I agree.
Seth Johnstone,
Oh,
Sabina Knoll,
No.
Nicole Pappas,
Yes.
and Carla Eberly.
No.
Hold on. Okay, motion fails. So we will not add in actively practicing in Oregon.
Can I add something, Sammy?
Of course.
When we do an affidavit of licensure from another state that tells us how long somebody's been actively practicing, they also have to tell us whether or not the individual has had any disciplinary action. So
Right.
Anybody coming in, we would not accept them if they have current disciplinary action. And if they've had disciplinary action in the past, the state will give us that information. So just know, I don't think we've ever had any electrologists coming from another state with disciplinary actions, if that helps.
Yes, I think that does help, Tina. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to go back up. Make sure. I think we're on. Hold on. Thanks for taking a look on that. We've dealt with the direct supervision, indirect supervision. So number 8, it should be on page 6. Oh, that's not right either. It's 0, it's 8, not 910007, number 8. So procedures listed in 4E, which is the 230. may be performed under direct supervision, which means the supervisor is immediately accessible, but may not be in view of the procedure and must be available to provide guidance and instruction to the temporary trainee. So you guys voted on that last time. The temporary trainee the temporary trainee to supervise ratio while performing is 4 temporary trainees to 1 supervisor. The temporary trainee may have 1 or more supervisors during the electrology training program. You guys decided on that last time. If a trainee has more than 1 supervisor, 1 supervisor must be designated as the primary supervisor. The primary supervisor is responsible for maintaining the records of training for the temporary trainee, including but not limited to trainee tracking forms, certificate of training, and examination scores. So you added that in. I actually added in the examples so that get an idea of what type of documentation we're looking at. A temporary trainee is required to disclose to each customer that they are in training and they do not currently hold a Oregon permanent electrology license. Oh, there's Oregon, in Oregon. So you added all those in last time, and then 13 was already there. Does all of that sound about where we landed last time? Okay, moving right along. This is the limited. Oh, go ahead, Sheila. Sorry.
This is an aside. I don't know if it's allowed in a rule, but what is customary when someone is has a trainee working on one of your clients as far as charges? What do schools normally charge the customer less for student work? I know that happens in a brick and mortar school, but is that anything you can have any control over?
No,
Any suggestions at all?
that would be on a case by each trainer and each trainee and supervisor is going to probably charge something different.
Okay.
So
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. The temporary, so 331-910-0010 is the limited basis license. So this is usually a guest spot. So somebody coming from California, Washington, Maryland, they want to just come in and do a guest spot, say at Jamie's facility. They're going to cover her while she's on vacation. This would be how they get that type of license. And so this is just to clean up to align it with tattooing and body piercing. They all have this type of license. Requirements for electrology temporary license. So this, we didn't actually change. Oh, that's for that other one. So the electrology permanent license requirements. So pathway 1 is graduate of an educational institution. So Bob is the interim director at HLO, and he has determined that we will be offering an Oregon Laws and Rules exam. However, it will be free, online, and 25 questions. So they can do it before they get here, just sit for the written exam, and nice, clean, and easy. It'll be, so it is a bit of a barrier, but they can do it from the comfort of their home for free, and just to make sure that they have that information, so they know what the laws and rules are. So it'll be as easy as possible. Yes, Jamie. You're on mute.
Sorry about that. I think that is absolutely wonderful. But what I'd like to propose is that when any Oregon licensed electrologist has to renew their license, that they also have to take this test and pass it, because I'm running up against a lot of licensed electrologists that don't know Oregon rules and regulations, you know, and I think it would be a good refresher course is every time you, you know, you had to renew your license, you take this test and pass it. It wouldn't take that long, and if you want to make it every other year, that's fine with me too. But I do think it should be part of renewing your license as a licensed electrologist.
You guys want to have any discussion on that?
I'm wondering if that would add another cost to the licensing fee renewal.
No, it'll be a free test.
Yeah, it should be a free test, and it's just like you have to sign that you haven't had a felony in the last year. It would just be another box to check off after you pass the test.
Well, we would, how does that, do we get a copy, does a copy automatically come through to us if they completed it? Do we
No,
check it?
It goes to the individual who's taking the test and they have to provide it to the office.
So what will happen is under renewals, you have to pay, you have to attest to continuing education. This would be actually submitting a copy of the passing test score
I suppose.
with their renewal.
I suppose what you could do is they get that certificate and they could attest to that. And if we ever audited them or we could, I mean.
They could write in the passing score and attest to it.
Huh?
Write in the passing score and attest to it.
Truthfully, I'm even okay if you put the rules and regulations in and they just have to attest that they read it. I don't care if they pass it or not. You know, I do care, but what I'm saying is that when you, you know, renew your license, that you check off a box that you've read the laws and rules of the exam, you know, infection control and things like that. Because infection control has been changing drastically every year. And so this way, if they could just read the rules and regulations and the updates and just to attest that they read it.
Okay.
I think it makes sense to have at least the updates be somewhere where you automatically see them when you're renewing your license.
What do you mean?
Like the list of things that have changed on relevant rules in the past year or whatever. I
Well,
don't
that would
necessarily
be come out in a notice. Every time
Okay.
a rule changes, everybody gets notice and gets a copy of what those rule changes are.
Is that just sent in emails or is that
Yeah.
okay? Well, I don't know. I mean, I defer to Jamie to decide what's a good strategy of, you know, disseminating that information. But I thought we talked about this last time and had talked about having people acknowledge the changes in laws.
Well, we did, but what we were talking about before was where we were, and then Jamie popped us down to renewal, is that every person getting a license has to take the laws and rules test. And that Bob, our interim director, determined that's the way the office was going to go. And then Jamie decided that she thought that somebody renewing should also pass this test, but now it's went to a test to having done it. I mean, really with an attestation, we audit attestations, so we wouldn't have any way of knowing for sure if they really read the laws and rules or not. We wouldn't have any way of monitoring that. Like with continuing education attestation, we can say, we want all your records of your CEs. And then you actually have to give us that. And then there's a whole process that takes place. But if we just are going to have them attest as taking, to have read the laws and rules, it just is that. We would have no way of ensuring that actually happened. Unless they took the 25 question test that's free online. So I can do it either way.
I think it would be easier to renew your license just to attest that you've read them and the infection control requirements. If somebody's practicing, especially in this day and age, they're going to read the infection control requirements. And I do think that will make it safer for our for the public, that people know the infection control statements. And I think just attesting to it on your renewal is good enough, because truthfully, you can attest that you have your CEUs. Nobody has checked my CEUs in over 10 years because you're just too busy to do it, but that's my feeling. I think an attestation would be a step in the right direction.
Just want to point out that Sheila's got their hand up.
Go ahead, Sheila. Sorry about that. You're muted, Sheila.
When I put my hand up, I didn't realize somebody was going to mention that we had already mentioned putting the box on there to attest that we'd read them. But, just like you click off your terms and conditions for Microsoft or Windows or something, you do it so you can move on. You just don't necessarily read what you say you have read. So we can cheat on this really easy this way.
Mhm.
But it sounds like a really good idea for an association like ours to present this sort of thing. It's continuing education, have it something that we can manage to bring up to everybody, every year, or like that. But it's the test. I wouldn't mind doing the test, but if it makes it more complicated for you to license, you have to grade the test, or however you set this up. How much office time does it take to really check the exam?
No time. It automatically grades itself.
I'm kind of torn. I mean, I think it's more legitimate to actually take the test. I really do, but testing would be at least a step in the right direction. But I don't think everybody's going to do it with this. They're going to say they did it, but I don't think they're going to do it. So I guess, to be more honest, I think we should take the test.
You guys want to take a vote on that? The vote would be that upon renewal of your annual license, you would attest to having read the safety and infection control laws and rules. And I just need a motion.
I make a motion that we state that people have to take an attestation of having read the safety and infection control laws and the rules of the Oregon rules and regulations.
I second.
Okay, I'll call the roll. Jamie Bloom,
Yes.
Sheila,
Yes.
Lacey,
Yes.
Seth,
Yes.
Sabina,
Yes.
Nicole,
Yes.
and Carla.
yes,
Let's do. Okay. Back up here. Okay, so. I think we're done with all that. So, but just to clarify, for new licensees, they would actually have to take the Oregon laws and rules test. The only people attesting are people who are already licensed and renewing each year. Okay. Now moving down to Electrology temporary training license. Just wanted to verify that I have this accurate. The temporary training license is valid for 1 year, may be renewed one time. So it's a 2-year license if they so choose. I think that's what we landed on last time. Temporary trainee licensed under 69365 may provide electrology services under supervision. And it gives all the supervision rules. A temporary trainee must work in a licensed facility under 331 Division 925. So it's my understanding that in order to perform temporary, to be a temporary trainee under supervision, is you do have to be in a licensed body art facility. There was some question about if they were a medical facility and they were, say, licensed through hospital and healthcare systems and a public health, that there may be an exemption for that. And what the law actually says is that there's an exemption for healthcare providers as an individual, but not for an actual setting. So if there's a temporary trainee working under supervision of an Oregon licensed electrologist actively practicing for 2 years, they would have to have a licensed facility. And I will make sure that Amy and Kate have that information. So I actually met with Amy about this. She actually doesn't have this issue herself, but she was bringing the issue up for a colleague. And some of the issues is that, I think to what Seth said earlier, is that it's an administrative function for them. Someone has to track it, someone has to make sure that it's, you know, updated and they're not forgetting it, and that all the safety and infection control rules are in place. I can't imagine they don't have autoclaves and things like that in medical facilities. I just don't think that's happening. I think they have all those things. And it would be a checkoff list. So probably what we will do to ease the burden of having to have this facility licenses is create a self-inspection sheet for facilities. We have it for other professions. I don't think we have it for electrology, but that is basically a quick way to know that you're meeting all the requirements. So if an inspector comes in, you can go, yep, I have all this stuff. I've done my inspection sheet. I'm good to go. So hopefully that will ease some of the burden of having to obtain that license for Providence, OHSU, Legacy, those places that are hoping to have training programs. Does that answer that question that we had at the last meeting? Okay, moving on then. Oh yes, Jamie.
Sammy, I believe that it should, where were you 2 seconds ago? That it has to be in a licensed facility. I think you should put in the word Oregon licensed facility. Just for clarification.
What other type of facility would it be? We're actually pointing you to the facility administrative rules. I mean, I can add it, but I'm just not sure what other.
Yeah, number 4.
Is there going to be a California facility in Oregon?
Yeah, you know, a temporary must work in an Oregon licensed facility. I'm saying a licensed facility. Let's say the person was in Washington. Well, then it's not an Oregon licensed facility.
But they have to under 331 Division 925. That's all about licensed facilities in Oregon.
All right.
Oregon's fine. It's not a deal breaker. It's totally fine.
Yeah, I just think it's, you know,
Totally fine.
I like to dot my I's and cross my T's.
Speaking of dotting I's and crossing T's, and sorry to make you scroll back up, Sammy, but previously, you're on mute.
I'm listening, and I muted myself on purpose. Sorry.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Well, I'm sorry to possibly be providing you some frustration, but where in your first note there that said trainee licenses are eligible for renewal one time, I think that if we can make it explicit in the rules that people are able to reapply, that would be ideal.
I
think
guess that's a good question. Are you thinking that they could reapply and they would have an additional year and an additional renewal up to 4 years?
Yeah, I thought we decided that last time in the previous meeting. I thought that we talked about that and decided that.
I was unclear. That's why I added the may be able to reapply.
Okay. Well, I I think that it would make a lot of sense for people to be able to reapply. I mean, as we just saw with COVID, it's certainly easy for there to be a multi-year disruption to someone's life. And, you know, I can think of many circumstances under which a person would have to cease their training and would have to come back after a year or a few months or something. So I think that it makes sense to be able to reapply. Sorry, I thought that we had decided that last time.
You may have, and I don't, yeah. I tried capturing everything, but sometimes I miss things. That's why I put it and then I just skipped right on over it. So I
Okay.
apologize. I think that's a great point, and I do remember the conversation. My question to you is reapply one time, no limit on how many times they can reapply. The problem with that is then you have bad actors who just keep reapplying to be a temporary person and they never get permanent license. So is there a cap on how many times they can reapply, or is it open-ended that just can reapply?
Perhaps is it possible to put in verbiage along the lines of may reapply one time, or, you know, if or whatever, if additional reapplications are necessary, they will be approved on a case by case basis or something, so that there's a judgment call happening and you can go through and weed out bad actors.
Let me see. Additional. This is not how it will look in the rule, I promise. I think I could add something like that. I'm not sure how I will word it, but I put down a bunch of words that will remind me what I'm talking about when I go to write it. Yes, Jean.
I was saying, if somebody has not been able to finish their training in 2 years, unless there's unforeseen problems like COVID, or their mother got sick and they had to stop because they were taking care of her. I just think if you can't finish in 2 years, you're really not wanting to do this. This has to be a primary importance to you. I don't think, I think 4 years is just too long. That's just my personal opinion. I can definitely see, I think everybody should be able to finish the training in 1 year, and giving them another year, that's fine. But 4 years is just too long. You should be able to get it done in 2 years. Now, if there's a problem like COVID hits and everything is shut down, that's a totally crazy situation. And yes, they can reapply. But, let's say somebody was in a car accident and they can't do anything for a year. Well, when they're in the car accident, they notify you, and that the temporary training license is suspended until they can start it up again. Does that make sense?
Sure. I think either way, either a suspension or be able to reapply. I just think that there should be some explicit inclusion that if something happens in somebody's life and they aren't able to finish their training in 2 years, they're not out of electrology you know, that's not their one shot. They can recover from their car accident. They can, you know, ease their mother through hospice or whatever and come back afterwards. I just think that that should be explicit in there, since it, you know, we did make it explicit that we can renew it one time.
Okay, what I'll do is I will look at both scenarios. What I can do is we have such a thing as a dormant status, where if, say, you get pregnant and you gotta quit, you can write in saying, hey, I'm a temporary trainee. I need to put my license in dormant status. And then it would just sit there in dormant status, nothing happening. So we do have that option. We have used it in just cosmetology, I think. But I can steal language from there. Just so I'm absolutely clear, is that how you would want to handle? So would you just be reapply one time and then we wouldn't add in information or rule on any additional reapplication? Would be on a case-by-case basis? Or we just say, what, reapply one time and then you could put it in dormant status? Sheila, and then Seth, and then Carla, and then Tina, and then Lacey.
Could you repeat the question one more time?
Okay, so the question is, the temporary trainee is valid for 1 year and may be renewed one time and may reapply one time. So that was the original. And then there was conversation about adding any additional reapplication would be looked at on a case-by-case basis. Say COVID happens, whatever. And then an additional idea would be if, say, COVID happened, you could put the license in dormant status and it would just sit there. And once you took it out of dormant status, your 2 years would continue.
I think the case-by-case wording would cover the last part. And like you did before, it came out as a rule from the health authority over, you know, the epidemic. So I think there would be something that would come out from a higher up source even that would cover a situation like that. So I'm okay with putting 1 year in case-by-case. I'm not hearing anything.
Sure. I mean, I think that, yeah, if people want to reapply and have it approved on a case-by-case basis, like you said, sure. I just wanted there to be an explicit option for reapplication in case somebody's life circumstances prevented them from finishing in the first 2 years.
Okay, Seth, you want to go?
I think I've now had my point. Yeah, I can pass it on to Tina.
Okay, go ahead, Tina.
Okay, I just want to make clear. The temporary licenses, once they're issued for a year. We're not going to have them return a license to put it into dormant status. The temporary license would continue to go for the full year. They can let us know that they've stopped training during that period. Then they'll renew a second time on the temporary. And then after the second time, a lot of our other boards, you have to reapply. So to make
That's
it
the question.
easier, huh?
That's the question. They can renew one time and then they can reapply, but can they reapply till the end of time or can they reapply only one time? And
Yeah, I would say reapply only one time.
then there was additional conversation that if they did want to reapply for a second or time, that it would be reviewed on a case-by-case basis, say COVID happens and everybody's out of luck for 2 years.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that we're not putting a license in dormant status, because the license will continue to be a license in their hand for the year that it's running.
But we could put dormant status.
After they expire or after they become
That's not-
inactive.
That's not how we do it in cosmetology for independent contractor and freelance.
Yeah, once they've expired, once they don't renew their license, then it goes into a dormant status.
Oh, I see what you mean. They
Yeah.
just don't renew and then it just sits there.
Correct,
Basically
Then-
not assuming they don't have to pay a late fee.
correct.
Got you. Okay, so
Thank
reapply
you.
one time. And any additional reapplications on a case by case basis?
Yeah,
Are you
And
okay
that
with,
sounds-
are you okay with that, Tina?
yeah, they apply, they get their temp, they can renew one time, and that would be a case-by-case basis for them to reapply.
Okay, so, I think there is some differences of opinion, so let's go ahead and take a vote. I will, say what the vote is, and then someone can move and second. So a temporary training license is valid for 1 year. It may be renewed one time and may reapply one time. Additional reapplications after the first reapplication will be reviewed on a case-by-case basis. Something like that.
I move that we vote on that.
Okay, so that was a motion by Lacey. Need a second.
I second.
Okay, Jamie Bloom,
Yes.
Sheila Ahern,
Yes.
Lacey Keeney,
Yes.
Seth Johnstone,
Yes.
Sabina,
Yes.
Nicole,
Yes.
and Carla.
yes,
Okay, motion passes. Okay, good conversation on that one. Sorry I passed by it. I apologize. I'm gonna go ahead and call for a break before we get into electrology supervision, if that's okay. It'll be at 15, so we'll meet back here at 11 o'clock. And the plan is to be done by 1, and I think that's doable at this point. Okay, great. Thanks, guys. I'm gonna put you on microphone off and camera off.